They say reading is fundamental, and I get on this platform a lot and I talk about intersectionality, feminism, racism and anti-racist struggles and anti-classist struggles, for example, and our fights against homophobia. What I want to make clear again here is reading really is fundamental. Not only do I pertain to be in dialogue with the communities that I speak about, not for, but about from my own perspective, but I also read. And I just want to share with you three quick books that have really changed the way that I've thought about life. First and foremost, Alice Walker's The Temple of My Familiar. I've spoken a lot about the book, The Color Purple, but this is where she really shows herself as a true storyteller in a way that is so different from the way she's a true storyteller in the simplicity of The Color Purple. She is in the complexity of The Temple of My Familiar. And of course, it's a book that I learned about because my mother and her friends, my council of aunties, read it and sat around the kitchen table and talked about it. And I listened to what they'd have to say about it and the themes in it. And of course, that came out when I was in the 9th grade. And there was also Possessing the Secret of Joy, the trilogy of The Color Purple. And it spoke about female genital mutilation. So these are themes that I was introduced to as a young person about the lives and bodies of Black women just through books. I also want to mention, of course, classic slave narratives, not least of which is Harriet Jacobs, incidents in the life of a slave girl. And she, of course, gives a really bone-chilling account of the slave Bible and how Christianity was introduced on the plantation and how the Bible was sort of edited to say that, if you disobey your earthly master, then it will upset your heavenly master and you'll be punished, for eternity and that sort of thing. And that, of course, is something that we started to explore in high school, and it really changed, again, confirmed some things that I had started to suspect about the world and power around me. Of course, even as a young person, I didn't have words like intersectionality or anti-racism or anti-sexism. And I may not have even identified myself as a feminist as I do now. And then comes in perhaps the third and most important writer in all of this. It brings these stories together, Bell Hooks. Surprise! But particularly this book and this copy, which still has my OCMR, Oberlin College mailroom address, 1475, from 1993-94, when she would come back to university, to the college to introduce her books and give readings. Well, I picked up a used copy of this very book from margin to center. And she says something that I think for many people who are first generation university students, but for many students going to university for the first time, they are transformed. They experience the transformative power of education. And for those of you beginning the start of the school year at any level of education, you will know that the more you know, the more you grow, and knowledge is power. But the seed of that, particularly for those who sit at various intersections of what we might call normative power, a normal gender, male is normal, a normal person, female is the other, a normal race, white is normal, non-whites are the other, or class, this sort of classless yet moneyed person is the norm, yet so many of us are struggling. Bell Hooks offers this. My awareness to feminist struggle was stimulated by social circumstance. Growing up in a Southern Black, father-dominated working class household, I experienced, as did my mother, my sisters, and my brother, varying degrees of patriarchal tyranny, and it made me angry. It made us all angry. Anger led me to question the politics of male dominance and enabled me to resist sexist socialization. So even that word socialization, of course, is not something that she would have known as a child, nor I. And I, growing up a generation later in in the urban center in the very same state, she was in Hopkinsville, I grew up in Louisville, and still being aware of patriarchal dominance adherence to patriarchal norms all around me, despite and in spite of the realities of the matriarchy before us, despite and in spite of the power of women that was being asserted, particularly through the 90s as I came of age, and that we knew that there was something coming, and that that 1999 was going to bring a kind of liberation for everyone, the angst and the hopes and the dreams of the 90s, represented by Ellen DeGeneres on one hand and Janet Jackson on the other. We see that there is an anger that we all feel. We know something's wrong. We know something's up. And university in particular, but education in general, doesn't just teach us what to think, but more so empowers us to think and gives us tools to articulate just anger. Down with the patriarchy.